Now we're going to look at a video by the serial, this guy is in serial denial. He's thrown state, police, everyone else under the bus. He defied Judge Wright last night. He defied the graciousness and the kindness of the judge that managed the Supreme Court case. They got out of bounds. Some of the speakers at the rally told them to march. I can quote that. Justice Robinson Wright was really kind to these people in that court case, and they've thrown the justice under the bus without any respect or dignity or thankfulness or gratefulness for his decision to dismiss the case on grounds of common decency to the community. Now, there are reports, and this is very clear, that the speakers were inciting the crowd to march. Protesters in the crowds were shouting, "Let us march, we will march." They spilled out into the streets and even onto the light rail tracks. They stopped the services and they moved out of the area that they were supposed to be in. Now, Josh LEES can get on here and throw whoever he wants under the bus, but he is a serial psychopathic denialist, right? And he's running this group. He don't care. He don't give a crack about Sydney or Australia or anything like that. He just wants to run his so-called peaceful protest. Who's he trying to kid? Peaceful protests? No. Take your protests to Palestine, LEES. We've had it, mate. This is what he's got to say for himself. I'll stop it during his evasion.
Hi everyone, Josh LEES from the Palestine Action Group. Last night we saw the people of Sydney mobilise in huge numbers, 20 or 30,000 of us, for a peaceful demonstration at Town Hall Square to say to the world that we stand for humanity, we do not stand for genocide.
Now, who's doing the genocide? That's the first thing we need to ask. Now, you get your head down and start studying, because civilian loss in war is predictable, right? It's predictable, and sometimes it's not justifiable, but it's predictable. And Hamas and the Islamic regime, the Muslim Brotherhood and all the rest that are trying to annihilate the state of Israel, and these people here, these uneducated pro-Palestinian supporters, Hamas supporters, they don't understand that the realities of war are violence, uncertainty and proximity. Modern wars are fought in and around cities where civilians live. So if look at what happened in Berlin when they had to finish off the Germans. Everybody was killed in that region. The terror tunnels of the Gaza Strip and the missiles and bombs and terror attacks and suicide bombings and the massacre of October 7th and all the rest of it resulted in a war. Israel's gone, no, that's it, we're going to war. We've had enough of this lot. Now, this man is in denial because he's not coming from that narrative. Israel didn't provoke the Islamic ideologists, but Israel defended itself and they got every right to. Is that genocide? No.
That massive demonstration, that expression of the popular will of people in this city was met through really sickening...
of the popular will of a handful of people in that city.
State violence by our Premier and our New South Wales Police Force, sickening state violence in support of the sickening state violence that has been carried out in Gaza. That's what happened.
So he's talking about business in Gaza, not in Australia. What he's not perceiving, and this is the ignorance of the man, that the people that live in Australia, we're at the point where we don't give a shit about what's going on in Gaza. And I've got Lebanese heritage, Mr. LEES, and Aboriginal, so I'd love to sit down and talk to you, mate, because you're in complete denial. The people of Sydney, the normal common Australians, we've had enough of you. You're a liar, you're in denial, your agenda's got nothing to do with the spirit of Australia. Take it somewhere else.
Happened last night. This was a violent attack on protesters
that were completely and utterly out of order. They were completely and utterly out of order. He's not going to say that because he needs to save his ass.
To roll the red carpet out for someone who has incited a genocide.
And that's a lie again. See, his narrative doesn't wash. Okay? His narrative just does not wash, and it's not justifiable because unless you're an Islamic ideologist, right, and you do want terrorism and you do allow people to destroy parts of your country and all the rest of it without retaliation, right, well, you're in denial because you can't provoke war and expect the people that you represent not to suffer. Now, you're doing demonstrations, Joshua LEES, and some of your people are out of order and you're not prepared to admit that. You're just going to sit on your hands and say, oh no, we were protesting peacefully. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. People were chanting for everyone to march. They were inciting the crowd, and they did march, mate. So don't lie. You're a liar. The police were doing their jobs with protesters that were actually rioters.
That is the context here. We've all would be aware of many of the brutal stories, of course, the videos that are going around of a man with his hands raised in surrender being pummeled by riot police.
Now that's only part of the story. Absolutely part of the story. They antagonised the police to the point, right? They put themselves in the wrong place to the point where their resistance was met with force. This happened to the lady in Minnesota where she parked the car in front of the ICE agents, Nicole Good. She was shot. Then the other guy, he was shot. All made out to be good people, but when you do research, they're not. If these people want to put themselves in harm's way of the police, Joshua LEES, you need to take account for it. Don't make excuses for them and throw our police under the bus.
Another man thrown to the ground, 2 police kneeling on him while police repeatedly...
While he was resisting arrest. He was resisting arrest.
...punch him in the head and the kidneys. We saw, of course, the Muslim men kneeling in prayer, again attacked by police.
The Muslims were kneeling in prayer in an area that was restricted and they were asked not to be there.
There are so many stories.
Besides that, if you know anything about theology, what are the Muslims doing praying in public? Get out where no one can see us. You're only putting on a show for yourselves.
Coming in, an old woman, I'm told, has 4 cracked ribs from her violent treatment overnight. I personally witnessed...
So basically what Joshua LEES is saying is the police are deliberately just going out there to harm people for no reason. Right? Can you get your head around that? This is the extreme, pathological, serial lying that these people will do to defend their cause at the expense of the normal civilians that live in these cities.
Young woman who's just trying to leave by herself, not as part of a crowd, grabbed by the hair, thrown to the ground.
For no reason, of course, Mr. LEES. It was all for no reason. Do you think we're ignorant?
And arrested. Another 77-year-old man was violently arrested. He was punched. He suffered serious injuries. He can't walk properly today. He was then arrested on an assault police charge, only to be subsequently released 5 hours later, when, of course, it emerged that that charge was completely bogus. And
so he thinks he's a hero, this guy up here, for getting arrested, but he's not.
When it comes to all of these so-called assault police charges. Now, we said, of course, in the lead up to this, that the streets of Sydney should belong to the people of Sydney, not to the president of a genocidal state. That is what should have occurred last night, that our peaceful protest should have been allowed to occur. We should have been allowed to march. That's what we continue to ask police for last night. But this was an attack not just on people...
Hang on a sec, you were not allowed to ask because Justice Robertson Wright said that they couldn't. And he let them have a Justice Robertson Wright of the New South Wales Supreme Court, merciful Justice Wright, went halfway with them and said, you can have your protest, but don't march. Now they fought, it just come out of his mouth. Let's just replay that, viewers.
Been allowed to march, that's what we continue to ask.
They should have been allowed to march, but they weren't allowed to march. So he's in defiance of the law, and he needs to give an account because it turned into a riot. Oh, it's unbelievable. He is a serial pathological liar.
Asked police for last night, but this was an attack not just on people who were trying to march. This was an attack on everyone who was just trying to have even a static rally, which was completely lawful and allowed, even under.
See how he's playing it down? It wasn't static. I've shown you the footage in previous videos. It was a frenzy. It was a frenzy.
These current protest restrictions at Town Hall. The vast majority of people in that crowd was not just some small minority, either directly experienced or witnessed all around them really sickening acts of police brutality against people.
That's a lie. Another lie.
Who were just trying to disperse. I myself
stood
up on one of the benches on George Street footpath with a megaphone, appealing to the crowd that, now was the time to try to disperse, only for people to turn around and ask me, quite rightly, where can we go?
That's a lie, that's an exaggeration. So what he's saying is the police have circled them and trapped them. My daughter's a detective, and I know I can tell you for a fact that they would want those people out of there as quickly as possible, like at a football game or a rock concert. This guy is a pathological liar, I'm telling you.
And that's what I then said by the megaphone to Paul Dunson, the senior police officer in charge, who was watching me make that speech, who was filming me making that speech, actually. And it was at that exact moment when I was trying to appeal to the crowd and to the police to allow us to disperse, when the police charged in with horses, pepper sprayed, and the violence only escalated from there.
Now, if you're stupid enough, viewers, if you're stupid enough, and I'm going to say stupid enough, to believe that, right, then you're dumber than you think. You are completely stupid, because this guy has proven himself to be a projectionist, a denialist, and definitely a serial determined person to do what he has to do regardless of who it harms, who it hurts. Unbelievable.
And onwards. I was in Bathurst Street at one point when we saw those images of hundreds and hundreds of riot police repeatedly charging at people, pepper spraying everyone, trampling people underfoot who were already injured, already been pepper sprayed, couldn't get away in time, and so on.
Basically what Joshua LEES is doing is covering his ass, because it turned into a riot.
Now, as I said, Chris Minns has unleashed this really horrific police violence last night. One of the most outrageous lines that Chris Minns is trying to use today to justify that police brutality is that supposedly if that didn't happen, that we in some way pose some threat to Jewish people in Sydney or to the people attending the Herzog event at the ICC. Now,
viewers, in all honesty, they are an absolute threat to the Jewish community. Screaming out globalising Intifada from the river to the sea. Is this guy completely ignorant? What's happened is he's gotten to the stage where he's completely self-unaware. Because if you're in a group screaming out in different language, like in sort of from the river to the sea, global Intifada, and all this other anti-Semitist talk, which I thought was banned, which it's not, obviously. And he's going to stand there and say that's not in any way harmful and completely peaceful. He's not self-aware. He's completely unaware. He's lost in his cause. He is not a safe person.
Is so dishonest. Chris Minns knows that this is a complete lie, because the people who were trying to march in the opposite direction of
right. Now he's just thrown himself under the bus. Now he's thrown everybody else under, and now he's thrown himself under because they weren't allowed to march. But he's just said the people that were trying to march, there it is in black and white, were trying to march in the opposite direction. They weren't supposed to march at all. So he's just, everything he's just said's been lies.
That event that was taking place, Chris Minns cannot possibly use that event as an excuse for the sickening police brutality meted out to all of us. There is no justification for police's actions last night whatsoever.
No, not the fact that they broke ranks, not the fact that they didn't do what they were told. No, that's all allowed. This person's living in a bubble. It's a bubble of projection, denial, and he'll throw anybody he can under the bus to help himself. Now he's bringing in Donald Trump. Oh my God.
Minns is trying to bring seemingly a bit of Donald Trump's America to Sydney. That cannot be allowed to happen. We will not stand for it. We need to stand up against this kind of authoritarianism, these crackdowns on protest, and this unleashing of police violence. And we have called another rally tonight at the Surrey Hills police station to make that point, that there needs to be an investigation into the police brutality last night, that all the charges against protesters need to be dropped, and that we need to repeal this crazy raft of anti-protest laws that Chris Minns has passed, which has led to the police thinking that they are above the law, that they can do whatever they want, that they can brutalise protesters, as we saw last night.
No, he's having himself on, viewers. He's in complete denial, this bloke. It was out of control, completely out of control. See, what happens is they don't stop. They just keep going until everything's wrecked, everything's destroyed, everything's in confusion. And good luck, viewers. If you're following this bloke and you're confident about it, I wish you well, because it's not going to, in the long run, this is not going to end well for Josh Lees.